Evening, everybody. My name is Sir Jude, and this is the video lecture for our lesson this morning, which is about biodiversity and population. So our last lesson was about theories of evolution by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and Charles Darwin. So in this preliminary activity, let's determine the evolution model applied in each scenario and the theory supporting. So humans used to digest tree bark using their appendix. Now we do not eat such food, so our appendices have shrunk. So this is Theory of Use and Disuse by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Number two, the Canadian tiger swallowtail is a caterpillar that resembles snakes. As a result of this mimicry, their predators are scared of them and leave them alone. So this is Theory of Need, once again by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Number three, during the Phanerozoic era, multiple unidentified organisms coexisted and cohabited in the Earth's chaotic aquatic environment. So there are multiple organisms before. So this is Variation by Charles Darwin. Number four, in Galapagos Island, Ecuador, four finches cohabitate. So finches are bird species. So finches 1 and 2, the ones with larger and tougher beaks, eat larger seeds, while finches 3 and 4, the one with thin and sharp beaks, eat insects. This is Adaptation by Charles Darwin. Next, an eagle prefers to eat gray mice than dark mice. So this is Competition, also by Charles Darwin. An academically gifted student is the daughter of a doctor, which is her father, and a lawyer, which is her mother. Several of her parents' friends note that the student inherited her fast memorization from her father and communication skills from her mother. This is a Theory of Acquired Traits by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Finally, ants are best regarded for their industriousness and consistency in storing food. However, they are defenseless against large predators. Queens of the African Dorylus wilberti, correct me if I'm wrong for the pronunciation, can lay broods with up to 3 to 4 million eggs every 25 days, just so they will not be extinct. This is Overproduction by Charles Darwin. Alright, so according to Charles Darwin, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change, that lives within the means available and works cooperatively against common threats. So for him, no, it's not who is book smart or street smart, it's the one who can easily adapt and maneuver himself or herself in any given situation, regardless whether he experienced it for the first time or has been experiencing it periodically or continually. Okay, so let's move on to our final two topics for third quarter. So variety of organisms in a specific area, it refers to biodiversity, and the number of same species in a specific area, this refers to population. So our last lesson is about biodiversity and population. Let's start first with biodiversity. The biodiversity of a certain area can be assessed using three methods, the first of which is what we call species richness. When we say species richness, it refers to the number of species in a particular area. So in our example, we have two communities of birds. We have A and B. Okay, we're going to answer the question, how many different types of birds do you see? We're not interested on the total number of birds. We're interested in the number of bird species. And in both communities, we have four. Four for community A and four for community B. The second method used to assess the biodiversity of an area is the species abundance, which refers to the number of organisms in a particular area. This time, we're going to answer the question, how many birds, regardless of species, are there in each community? This is where we count the total number of birds, regardless of their species. For community A, there are 10 birds, And it is also the same for community B. There are also 10 birds as well. All right. So the third and final method of determining or comparing biodiversity of different areas is species evenness or in Tagalog, pagkakapantay-pantay ng bilang. No? So closeness in number of species in an area. So which community has a more balanced number of each species? Unlike the first two methods of determining biodiversity we're in, all we have to do is just count straightforwardly to get the answer. No, here we have to count for each community, and then we have to compare. So the first bird in community bird species in community A, there are seven. The second bird is only one. Third bird is only one as well. And for the fourth bird species, there's only one. So for community A, we have 7 is to 1 is to 1 is to 1. For community B, the first bird we have 2. For the second bird we have 3. For the third bird we have 2. And for the final bird we have 3. Now that we have 2 is to 3 is to 2 is to 3 for community B. Now that we have the number of bird species in each community, no, therefore we can say that community B has a higher species evenness than community A because it has a more balanced number of each species. Now, the Swiss exercise, but this time with using flowers. So we have the purple iris, the yellow sunflower, the red rose, the pink chrysanthemum, and the peach lily. Let's determine the species richness, abundance, and evenness of each community. Let's start with community 1. For community 1, there are three species of flowers. So we have lily, iris, and sunflower. For its species abundance, there are a total of 10 flowers. And for species evenness, we have one lily, 8 irises, and only one sunflower. Now, let's do the same for community 2. For community 2, its species richness is 5. All flowers were represented. Rose, lily, iris, sunflower, and chrysanthemum. For species abundance, just like community 1, we also have a total of 10 flowers. And for species evenness, we have 2 flowers, 2 lilies, 2 irises, 2 sunflowers, and 2 chrysanthemums. So let's compare the two communities in terms of species richness. Between both communities, no, community 2 has a richer species because all flower species were represented. At least in this example lang, no? For species abundance, neither community dominates over the other because both of them have an same number of total number of flowers. However, community 2 has a more balanced flower species because yan, this is an example of an equally distributed species now because this is 2 is to 2 is to 2 is to 2 is to 2 or in lowest terms, no, 1 is to 1 is to 1 is to 1 is to 1. So there are uh, number two flowers of each species in community 2. Alright, so yan na naman po for biodiversity. Let's move on to population, part 2. So in the first graph, what we see is the population of locusts in Central Luzon fields during the first 5 days of April. And on the second graph, what we have is the population of green algae or lumot in Central Luzon in the during the first 10 days of April. So uh both graphs attained maximum of 3,000 organisms. So for locusts, they attained the highest number for 5 days, while for green algae, they attained the maximum number in 10 days. Okay? So, number one, what letter does the first graph look like? The letter is the letter J. And I think this is true not only for locusts but also for insects, no? Because for insects, they breed and overpopulate compared to other organisms like green algae. What letter does the second graph look like? It's letter S. So, no, so it takes a lot of time bago dumami yung population ng mga ganyang klaseng organisms, right? Number three, did the population of both organisms increase or decrease? As the days went by, both of them increased. Number four, which organism reproduced faster? It's the locusts because they attained the maximum number 3,000 in only 5 days. That means the organism that reproduced slower is the green algae because it attained the maximum number for 10 days compared to locusts 5 days only. All right. So what we did was compare the population, no? Kaya in part two, uh, this is the final part of our topic in third quarter, right? So ano-ano nga ba yung mga factors affecting population growth? Because as we learn from biodiversity, there are several species living or interacting with each other, and there are also non-living non-living things that can also influence the growth of population, either the growth or the decay of the population of some species. So instead of me listing down one by one, no, and defining them just like any other topics, no, I used several examples. So for the first one, the new strain of dengue virus breaks out in the country. So dengue virus originates from mosquitoes. So if mosquitoes increase, no, then the population of their hosts, no, human beings will probably decrease. Kasi dengue is one of the dangerous and deadly diseases. So therefore, the first factor is what we call diseases and parasites. Okay. Second factor, a person breeds guinea pigs in a cage. After a few generations, the breeder observes that the guinea pigs are aggressive towards each other. The young ones are less healthy and frequently die. That's because probably, no, the larger and the smaller guinea pigs compete not only for territory but also for food. And therefore, this is competition. Number three, an increase in population of house lizards and barangay himpot causes a decrease in population of mosquitoes. So in this case, the lizards act as the predators while the mosquitoes act as the prey. So therefore, this is predation. Next, number four, Mrs. Rosales has 55 students in her biology class, but she has room for only 50. That means there are five students who will have no set of tables and chairs. The room was crowded, so five students were asked to go to the curriculum chairperson to change their schedule. Because there's relocation or transfer of location from the original to the intended one, depending on the decision of the curriculum chairperson, the fact that five students were asked to go out and transfer is what we call emigration. All right. So what is so special about the first four factors affecting population growth? Diseases and parasites, competition, predation, and immigration. These four factors are called density-dependent factors because they're influenced by population density. So as you notice, now in each example, there is like one group or population that will increase and another that will decrease. So they are influenced or affected by the population density of each group. That's why these first four factors are classified as density dependent. All right. So there's three more. No? Number five, Super Typhoon Yolanda caused many residents to leave Leyte. This is natural disasters. And we're not only talking about typhoons, it can also be earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, landslides, even forest fires, etc., etc. Number six, snails hibernate during summers while bears hibernate during winters. When we say hibernate, we're talking about sleeping or period of dormancy or inactivity. As a result, their populations remain virtually the same during those seasons. So this is either temperature or sunlight. All right, we're down to the last factor. The oil spill in Cavite area harmed many aquatic organisms in the vicinity. Oil cannot spill on its own without the intervention of human activities. Right? So if we call the first four factors density dependent because they're influenced by population density, then the final three factors, natural disasters, temperature, sunlight, and human activities, will be categorized as density independent because they are uninfluenced by population density. All right, so this is the last quote unquote lecture for third quarter. So let's have a brief review or recap about the factors affecting population growth. That's it for I don't know for third quarter. We started uh kind of heavy with nervous system and reproductive system, and then we move on to menstrual cycle and calendar method, which are also very heavy in content, and then central dogma of life, which is also very cerebral. And then starting with evolution and this topic now, this is probably evolution and these two, biodiversity and population, are the lightest topics in third quarter. All right. So just like what we've been doing, determine the factor that limits the population of organisms and classify if it is density dependent or density independent. So drought or a period of tagtuyot drives a herd of antelope to relocate to a new area. There are actually three pairs of answers here. So number one is temperature, sunlight, density independent. Then natural disaster, which is also density independent. No, these two are related to drought. And finally, we have emigration, density dependent, because the herd of antelope transfer to a new location. Number two, a volcanic eruption destroys a significant portion of a jungle. This is natural disaster, density independent. Then number three, we have a growing wolf population preying heavily on the local rabbit population. This is density dependent and predation, in which the wolf acts as the predator while the rabbit acts as the prey. Then next, hedgehogs hibernate or undergo winter sleep, while snails estivate or undergo summer sleep. So this is temperature or sunlight, density independent. This is one of the interesting thing about these animals now. They have like a period of dormancy or inactivity that lasts for months or for a season, unlike us human beings. And this is the moment wherein the killing stops, no, unless their territories get invaded. A parasitic worm epidemic leads to a dramatic drop in the deer population from the word parasitic. This is diseases and parasites, density dependent. Okay, we're down to the final two. A team of marine biologists rehabilitates mangrove forests in worn-out islands, which serve as reptile breeding grounds. This is human activities, density independent. And finally, two bird species with different sizes in a region grapple over the same seed, with the larger species outmatching the smaller ones. There are two bird species struggling for existence, specifically for food. So this is competition, density dependent. And there you go. This is third quarter, Science 10, Biology, no? I hope na marami kayo natutunan for this quarter. This is probably my favorite quarter because a lot of interesting topics are here. A lot of uh, even the nervous system and central dogma of life. I know that they're the two most cerebral and cognitive topics now, but really the most interesting insights and lessons and even a lot of questions about our existence were tapped by the lessons in third quarter. No? So please enjoy your holiday, review for the upcoming long test 3.4 and mastery test and periodical exam are fast approaching. So take time to revisit our past lessons. Till then, this is Jude. Good night and goodbye.